We're going to and welcome to another edition of Zawana Aoriwa.
We'll be bringing you up to date on all that's happening in and around our community, and we're going to start off the program today with Chief Rhonda Lynn Kirby, who's now in studio with us. Welcome, Rhonda. And we're going to be discussing the Fair Wage Agreement with the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake and touch on the bridge project a little bit as much as possible. So, Rhonda, we're just going to get right to it. One of the first questions is, could you maybe identify or explain what is your role?
I'm the Labor Portfolio Chief, and with that takes into consideration the Fair Wage Agreement, which is part of the Mohawk Bridge Consortium agreement with MCK.
Okay. Now, the last couple of months, even the last year maybe since the bridge project got started, well, it's been ongoing now for over a year. But it's been kind of controversial, and in the last couple of months, yourself and maybe Kenneth McCumber, Chief Kenneth McCumber, kind of find yourselves right in the middle of everything. But is that factual? Would you say that people perceive you as having a lot to do with the bridge project, but is your role like smaller, or do you have a lot to do with it?
Specifically, my role was to make sure that the Fair Wage Agreement was signed for this previous year. Kenneth did have the file, and after elections I did take it over. And we've had several meetings over the past few months to try and come to an agreement on the Fair Wage.
Okay. And when you say Wayne, you mean Wayne Rice of Mohawk
Bridge Consortium.
Yeah. Okay. Now, did they sign the Fair Wage Agreement?
Not for this previous year. The issues are the boatman and flagman rates that we have in the Fair Wage Agreement, and although he has sent back some documentation, he has really never given a definitive rate that he wants to use. We did receive approximately 50 pages on February 5th, citing the different rates across the industry, but he still has not yet given us a definitive rate. So it is higher than what he is proposing, and we did find out last week that Wayne did submit a rate lower than what was cited in the Fair Wage Agreement. And although it's been signed for several years.
For those positions?
Yes. The rates did go up for those two positions in 2006. It might be considered a little bit higher, but we did look at the collective bargaining agreement to define those rates. There is no classification for a boatman and flagman, and they come under a laborer's rate, and that's what we used.
Rhonda, the question I have here, that I want to ask you is, why is the council involved in private enterprise in this regards?
Well, the Fair Wage Agreement goes back to the early 80s. I think when bridge work did start, there's been, every year there's some sort of a repair done to the bridge. And I think, I'm not sure what year, but it was because of making sure that the men are paid fair wages for their work that's being done, and which is comparable to work if they're working outside the community.
So it wasn't something that Fair Wage Agreement wasn't just created specifically for this. Oh no,
it's been around for I think safe to say 25 years at least.
With all the controversy that has been imposed on this particular project with the Mohawk Bridge Consortium and the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake, where did the quote-unquote confusion start with all this? Where did the budding part of the controversy begin?
When we're talking about the Fair Wage Agreement, it's something that the consortium has signed at least 3 years in a row, and this year those two positions have become an issue.
So they didn't sign it for 2010, is that what you're saying?
9-10.
Okay, 9-10. Okay.
Yeah.
Did they say why they didn't sign?
That was part of the difficulty. They just were quite adamant about not signing specifically because of those two rates that they don't want to pay. And it's been a challenge, and Wayne just really never said what rate he wanted to pay. But we did find out last week, and it was confirmed by Carlin of the Bridge Corporation, that their rate was lower than the Fair Wage Agreement. So that was really disappointing to find out after all these years. And it could have been said early on in the year. It didn't have to go on for the last 8 months. We are looking at a new agreement that needs to be signed for April 1st, 2010.
How does one enforce the fair wage agreement from the position of the council? Is there a set amount of guidelines since this was developed in the 80s? Is there policy to be able to enforce that a company that works within Kahnawake, whether it be a community company or an outside company, if they sign this particular guideline, is there a way to enforce this? And if they're not following,
Like to make them follow it, you know.
Well, that's part of, we're ensuring, the fair wage agreement is there for the men who are working on the project. It's
Right.
to make sure that they receive their fair wages and benefits. So that's our responsibility to make sure that that's followed.
but to enforce this, meaning that is there penalties? Is there any type of I'll even say it. Is there any type of jail term that the Mohawk Council or No.
Because we've had such difficulty, and we really have had to, go to last resort, and we sent a letter to the Mohawk Bridge Consortium last week, saying that if it is not signed, and because we've made several attempts, that we will begin the process to suspend their Mohawk self-insurance.
Which is, MSI, okay.
MSI.
And what would that do?
Well, the men would not be covered if they're working on the bridge, so it would be in the best interest of the Mohawk Bridge Consortium to sign. Although there's that dispute, like I said, we've only found out last week that was the reason it is being disputed.
What did Wayne ever say, that why they didn't want to follow the fair wage agreement for those two positions?
Well, it wasn't that he wasn't following, he didn't want to follow. He just thought the rates that we had in there were higher than what he had wanted to pay. But it was never defined what he wanted to exactly pay.
So what are we talking? Like dollar-wise?
From
should they be
2003 and to 2006, the rate was $12 an hour. And with benefits, it was roughly about $20 an hour. In 2006, when we used the collective bargaining agreement, it looks like it is up a considerable amount, and it goes to about $25 an hour, $25.14 and change. But then you have to add on the benefits that the men are allowed. So it does jump up a considerable amount. But in 2006, the rates went up and it was signed. And now we're looking at 2009-10, and I don't know if it was overlooked. They never really looked at the rates, but those have been in there for the past 4 years.
Now they've only disputed these two positions, correct? Every other job, have they been following the fair wage agreement? Every other position that's been held on?
To my knowledge, they
NBC?
have been. There is the cost of living that goes up in every position each year, and the consortium has said that they will pay anything that's outstanding for any of the iron workers or anybody on any of the positions that they have.
One question I have for you, Rhonda, and this might be a very difficult question to ask in regards to this project, but if they, and from what I'm hearing is that they are going to comply with the agreement, but if they didn't comply, you pull their MSI from the bridge, but do they have an option of going to another insurance company and push the council on the side and say, listen, we'll just go with someone else?
Well, we're hoping it doesn't go to that route. The reality is that anyone who works in Quebec is covered by the CSST.
Well, thanks, Rhonda. For now, we're going to be back with more questions here on Sawen Aoriwa. Don't go away. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.